efforts, projects, businesses, and initiatives in their communities that have all created positive change where they are. These are fast-paced presentations where you'll learn kind of what they did, why they did it, how they did it, and the challenges that they faced and overcame doing it. There will be time for Q&A at the end, so if you have questions for any of our panelists, feel free to just plug them down there in the comments as they come to you. We'll be keeping track of them, and after all the presentations, we'll bring all of our speakers back to have a little bit of Q&A where we can answer those questions for you. So what do you say we jump right in? Our first presenter today is Laura Harper Lake, an interdisciplinary artist who is passionate about being creative. She works in painting, drawing, multimedia, photography, printmaking, sculpture, graphic design, videography, writing music, short stories, and hosting and editing a podcast. I'm not an artist, but I think that's about all of the art that I can think of. So obviously her thirst for creativity is strong, and it's been with her since she was a child. And that grew into a viable future after attending and graduating from Chester College of New England. After that, Laura began her official business as an artist under the name Artful Harper Studios in 2016. She's displayed her work in various galleries throughout New England and is a permanent artist represented at the Upfront Street Studios Gallery in Exeter. Laura also works as a graphic designer at Regional Economic Development Center, a driven nonprofit that serves Southern New Hampshire. Laura co-hosts a podcast, Creative Guts, that interviews other creatives from all disciplines and explores what we're all striving to communicate through their craft. So please join me in welcoming Laura Harper Lake.
The arts and culture blog for Stay Work Play has been pretty easy to do. I'm exposed to endless creatives through the Creative Guts podcast. I love spreading the word about folks who are making their passions happen, and New Hampshire has a vibrant and inspiring art scene, and I'm extremely excited to tell you more about it. So where did this all come from? Let me take you to the beginning of Creative Guts. In the spring of 2019, my friend Sara Ducros and I decided to start a weekly podcast, and there were a few motivators on my end. I was fascinated with the medium of podcasting. I secretly had a daydream of voice acting someday, and most importantly, I had been thinking for years about a way to communicate how impressed I was with people who continue to pursue their creative passions day in and day out. I am an artist myself, have been since I was a little kid, and I went to school for it at Chester College of New England. Fast forward to over a decade later, and I'm still making art. But I know that is really hard to maintain when art doesn't fully pay the bills. I and others struggle with that. That's why I find it so inspiring when I come across creatives working and making it happen and fulfilling their passions. Now, aside from some minor editing skills from recording music in the past, I didn't know much about the world Sara and I were diving into. We are both storytellers, and the main focus was the guests we were interviewing. We crafted a format, we developed questions we wanted to know, and we decided to focus on many disciplines of creativity, not just the obvious ones. It has been fantastic. We have interviewed visual artists, writers, musicians, photographers, printmakers, chefs, podcasters, actors, fiber artists, choreographers, jewelers, fashion designers, woodworkers, creative entrepreneurs, arts advocates, arts educators, and gosh, probably even more. We even got Will Stewart of Stay Work Play on an episode. All of the folks we interviewed were selected because they had a flame to keep being creative. We did not set out to exclude other creatives from other locations on our show, but I will say there has been no shortage of creativity in New Hampshire. Sara and I started a list on a Google Doc of who we wanted to interview right from the get-go, and that list has grown exponentially. We keep adding names, and certainly have not even scratched the surface of what New Hampshire has to offer. The actual connecting with our guests is the best and easiest part. On the flip side, this thing is a lot of work, and one of the tougher areas is editing, only because it takes an enormous amount of time. As you can see here, I use Adobe Audition to edit, and Sara uses the program Reaper. Together, we split the tasks and tackle what needs to be done, and there is always plenty to do. For example, we create our own show notes, weekly teaser videos, social media posts, and even more admin type stuff. But it's all worth it because we get to meet awesome folks who are making a difference through their craft. I don't have enough time to talk about all the guests we've interviewed, but I'd like to point out a few so you can get a taste of the awesomeness that's all around us. First, Rose Bryant is an amazing painter and owner of Art Up Front Street Studios and Gallery in Exeter. She, along with 8 other artists, myself included, create artwork in their studios, display pieces in the gallery, and warmly welcome visitors to enjoy the space as well. Rose is all about building an artistic community that supports artists and art lovers alike. From Keene, New Hampshire, Becky Karish is a writer and podcaster. Read to Me with Becky Karish features snippets from literary works that Becky selects and then, using the gateless writing method, mirrors back the greatness within the works. She beautifully states on her website, "When we tune into craft, we develop agency and power in our own work." Terrie Robinson was only 19 years old when we interviewed him, and he had already accomplished so much. I wanted to nickname him Benjamin Button. It didn't make sense how someone so young could be so accomplished. He is a fashion designer, creative director of a streetwear brand, and the creative project collaborator for the Portsmouth Black Heritage Trail. And that's just naming a few things he has worked on. Bianca Morales moved here from Texas and brought her Mesoamerican art style with her. She is a muralist who is changing the face of our state and some other places in New England, often incorporating opportunities for youth and young adults to participate in creating murals as well. She explores identity and culture through her art in such a refreshing and soulful way. Are you enjoying the music that's been in the background of this whole video? If so, you have Raphael Bostic to thank. He is a musician, music producer, writer, and illustrator based in Manchester. He musically goes by Bug, and he has collaborated with so many other artists and musicians. He is extremely generous with feedback, encouragement, and celebration of other creators. I wish I could be a teenager again, but in 2020, after chatting with Deborah Holloway, the executive director of Arts in Reach, or AIR. AIR is a Seacoast-based nonprofit with a mission of providing teen girls with a platform to develop their creative freedom and realize the power of their voice in a positive and supportive setting. This is just the kind of invaluable program that will help shape young creatives for the rest of their lives. I don't know if I've smiled more than when I'm dancing with Sara Ducros. She is a dance educator, choreographer, and the founding artistic director of the multidisciplinary dance company, the Neoteric Dance Collective. Sara's goal is to change the way that people experience dance, whether it's on stage, in a classroom, or now in their homes. She is currently hosting virtual Wake Up Wednesdays, where she teaches dance live on Instagram. Steve Bambukas, a maker, instructor, and president of the board of directors at the Port City Makerspace. Steve is so passionate about the Makerspace because aside from the many classes they offer, it provides folks tools, resources, and a space to make in that they normally wouldn't have access to. And one of the intangible results is the collaboration between makers. Are you inspired yet? I wish I had enough time to talk about everyone we've interviewed. Honestly though, this is just the tip of the iceberg of some of the creative happenings in New Hampshire. Our list of who else we want to interview is longer than who we have interviewed, and we've almost been doing this a year. We feel very lucky to be in such an inspiring and accessible community. And creative opportunities don't stop even when we are staying home and being physically distant. I recently wrote in an arts and culture blog about how many creatives and organizations are offering lessons, performances, events, and more, all virtually. For example, the Seacoast Repertory Theater has a live stream, the Rep radio station, fun family classes, dance workouts, live stream cabarets, and more. Recently, my co-host Sara was talking about how she just needed a starting off point in a creative pursuit, and her confidence was built up in such a way that she thought, why can't I try to learn another creative thing? And then it just snowballed. Since the start of the podcast, she has learned fiber arts, podcast editing, video editing, and participated in a make-along with Sarah Koff to learn blog printing. I am so impressed by my co-host. She took a creative leap, which led to more than she could have imagined. So if you're looking to learn something new or get involved, you really should take the leap too. There are many opportunities and so many folks that will help you make something happen. Every single guest we have interviewed left me feeling overwhelmingly inspired. Creativity is contagious, the good kind of contagious. So go make it happen. As we say at the end of each episode, show us your creative guts.
Thank you, Laura. That was great. I'm always amazed at the amount of creativity and creatives that we have here in New Hampshire. And I think I like to say that New Hampshire is a state of best kept secrets. And I think it's underappreciated just the types and the variety and the breadth of creatives that we have here in New Hampshire. So thanks to you and Sara, for working to really showcase everything that we have here and really making New Hampshire known as a place for creatives in general and young creatives in particular. There's a lot of different kinds of creatives, of course, and our next speaker is creative, certainly in the business sense, among many other talents. His name is John Nouri Eliard, and he is the creator, owner, and operator of New Hampshire Rocks, a mission-focused business aimed at helping to improve the experience of living in and visiting New Hampshire. New Hampshire Rocks provides a statewide resource for things to do while helping residents via the Locals Card, a discount and events card exclusive to New Hampshire residents. Since its inception, New Hampshire Rocks has grown across the state and has already helped to increase engagement between residents, businesses, and activities. John is a boomeranger, having grown up in Canterbury, but moved across the country before coming back home to build New Hampshire Rocks. His background is in economics, and he is currently pursuing his MBA in economic community development to show how New Hampshire Rocks can better serve New Hampshire through collaboratively building regional community centers. Please join me in welcoming John Nouri Eliard.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us online to hear a bit more about NH Rocks, why it matters, how it was made, and a bit on some of the challenges that we face. My name is John, and I am the owner and creator of NH Rocks, as well as the Vice President of Fusion, the Lakes Region Young Professionals Network. I hope you find this presentation interesting, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to connect. I guess the best place to start is why NH Rocks matters, and what can it do for me being you, a New Hampshire resident. To keep things simple, I'll go about answering these questions in 3 points. These are 1, connecting to activities, 2, stimulating the local economy, and 3, better connecting the communities across Hampshire. Having been born and raised in this state, I used to ask myself a question that may sound familiar. What is there to do in New Hampshire? This is the first way that NH Rocks helps. Our website provides a searchable database for things to do so you can better experience living in New Hampshire. We also co-host events with participating businesses that residents may attend for free if they have a Locals Card. Which brings us to the next point. The Locals Card is the annual membership that unlocks reusable discounts at participating businesses for a full year. It is exclusive to New Hampshire residents. The Locals Card structure helps the local economy by putting money back into the pocket of those that use it on an individual level. Since this is such an important part, I want to take a quick second to dive deeper into the Locals Card. So here's how it works. A resident applies for membership with a copy of their driver's license and $20, either online or in person. When approved, their membership unlocks the reusable discounts which are immediately redeemable at any participating business when they present their card. Almost immediately, we received reports of residents saving money, with some saving $100 in less than 3 months. These savings allow residents the ability to increase patronage, pay off debt, or just save and increase their opportunity for social progress. Now, you may be thinking, John, that sounds great for residents, but what about businesses? How does this program help them? Well, in line with predictions, we have seen this increase in residential disposable income directly translate to an increase in some participating businesses' on-site cash spend and foot traffic by 25 to 50%. Therefore, we can concretely say that this structure helps businesses realize more profits while residents save more money. All that sounds great, right? You can better afford to buy your friend a pint, take your kids on an adventure during a rainy day, or simply offset the impact of bills without changing your lifestyle. But what is all this for? Why would you trust me? Trust NH Rocks with your money, even if that means you'd save more than you spent. This leads us to our third point, which answers why NH Rocks matters and why this business is so important to the future of Hampshire. This third point is community. The mission of NH Rocks is to create a community based on increased communication and shared experience. This means better connecting the regions of New Hampshire by increasing affordability through the locals card, increasing awareness of activity through the website, and increasing residential engagement through co-hosted events at local businesses. It is through the successful working of these three elements that we can better improve the experience of living in and visiting New Hampshire. Creating a structure that could support this kind of mission was not easy and feels like it was half luck and half preparation. The idea spark came after I had participated in an unaired national game show that was to be put out by Facebook. To qualify, you had to virtually tour your state and explain why your state was the best and why you were the best person to represent it. I was hooked on the experience and wanted to find a way to share that experience positively and sustainably. After a few imaginings and open conversations, the structure began to take shape. I got excited and made a plan. So at the age of 27, I moved back in with my parents to save money. I found a job managing a spa store that allowed me to dual purpose time. I began studying marketing strategies and media software so I could sell businesses, and I enrolled back into college to get my MBA in community economic development so I could prove that a digital community could translate to a real world community. 2018 was dedicated to effort and patience. The database was built out by hand. I input every hike, every mountain bike trail, every brewery, distillery, state park, ad nauseum in New Hampshire to create what we currently have. The hikes alone took 40 hours to input. At the same time, my girlfriend and I were traveling the state to get media for as many locations as possible so the site could properly work as a digital tourism site and connect residents to activities. Now, this is still very much a work in progress, and it remains a challenge. But it got to a usable state, so I took a step forward. February 2019, the official start of NH Rocks and the start of the locals card, with 0 participating businesses. To add to my 2018 works, I had also been reaching out to businesses to create videos, and I pulled from this list to get preliminary interest in 2019. Over that first year, we grew at an average rate of 1 business per week. Partnered with Stay Work Play on the locals card, began to expand services, and grew the team to include 2 new members. Currently, we have 63 participating businesses and over 300 locals cards in circulation. We have seen benefits for both residents and businesses, and we are working on growing out our sales team. We had our 1-year celebration and gained experience in putting on larger events, and when we're not all staying home, we have monthly recurring events in the Lakes and Merrimack Valley regions. With the rapid growth and established benefits of NH Rocks, I can joyfully say that this business is a success. Oddly, it rarely feels that way. Like many small businesses, we face challenges in cash flow, awareness, and adoption. Other challenges we face as a multi-purpose entity are staying on top of different segment trends and changes like in social media, or web design, or app design. But the most critical challenge we face is building trust. We are a digital company in the 3rd oldest state in the country. When technology adoption, usage, and comprehension decreases as age increases, and the issues with the sale of digital information most notoriously brought to light by Facebook and Cambridge Analytica further erodes trust. And then, Amongst all this uncertainty, we ask residents to upload their driver's license to verify. Many are hesitant to digitize this information, and who can blame them? So how will we build trust and fix this most glaring challenge? To us, the answer is simple. We earn it. We earn the trust of New Hampshire residents by staying true to our word. We offer ways of verifying in person at events. We save them money, we share our profits, and we are transparent in what we do and what we do. Over time, if we are a consistent force for good, we can earn that trust and better support residents, businesses, and the communities of New Hampshire. So what do we want? The mission is great and the structure is helpful, but what is the end goal? What is this real world community that forced me back to school so I could prove it could be done? To answer that, we need to talk about the full plan for New Hampshire we aspire to. Imagine this, a community center that serves as an informational hub for residents and tourists. You can find a new thing to do, take a class, rent some gear, get a guide, get a bite to eat, and maybe do a little bit of shopping. Around that hub is affordable housing for residents with parks and walking paths. Now imagine one of these in each tourism region in New Hampshire where you can get discounts, free rentals, and even afford to rent a room to stay for a weekend. This opens the way for safe residential travel and brings all of our vibrant cultures closer together. This is what we want for New Hampshire. So there it is, a quick overview of NH Rocks, why it matters, how it was made, challenges, and an end goal. Thank you for your time and joining me today. I hope you stay safe, healthy, and well. And if you have questions, I'll be a part of the Q&A segment, or you can always send me an email at john@nhrocks.com.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Up next, we have another entrepreneur who is doing great things to build community here in New Hampshire. Keating Tufts was born and raised in Manchester and studied organizational leadership at Southern New Hampshire University, while he also worked as a social worker in Manchester. With the tethering of these worlds, he found games had common ground. While exploring deeper into the idea of play and gamification, he discovered that there are spaces dedicated to pursuit using games to entice its community to take part in more face-to-face entertainment. The Board Game Cafe had been popular in Asia for decades and has been growing worldwide lately. While seeing the progress and positive impact that game nights were having, Keating sought to bring such a space to Manchester. After 5 years of working on this project, Boards and Brews, the 603's first board game cafe, has been open for 2 years and looks forward to an exciting year of growth with new upgrades to the space and an energized community. Please join me in welcoming Keating Tufts.
Hello, everybody. Pleasure being here. Thanks for having me say Work Play. My name's Keating, owner-operator of Boards and Brews. I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire. I went to Central High School, then went to SNU. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do, studying marketing. And then I stumbled across Simon Sinek in one of my OL classes, and he talked about, starting with why, basically. He's saying like a lot of companies would go out there and start with what, like a great product, and then say buy this product, this is what it does. Where Simon talked about starting with why are you going to make a great product in the first place? So I kind of latched on to that. So I wanted to make something for my community. Why? To bring people together. So what could I do that would bring people together? So as a social worker, I bought a board game one day and I used it with the guys I was working with, and it was very engaging for them. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. So I went and bought another game. And then I invited my friends over. And so my friends played some board games, and my friends and the guys I was working with were playing board games together. I thought it was I was like, wow, these board games are a really great tool. So I looked more into board games, and it turns out that the hobby is much bigger than I thought it was. It's not just Monopoly and Scrabble and Battleship anymore. It kind of evolved over the last couple of years, much like video games have evolved over the last couple of years. The same links have been made in board games, which was kind of interesting to find out. So looking around the board game community, I found a meetup group in Manchester that played board games once a week. So I started going to that, meeting those people and learning more about board games. And I was like, it would be really cool if there was a dedicated place for playing board games every day. So I found out what a board game cafe was. Very popular in Asia the last couple decades, and more recently in Europe and such. This is an image of me playing the Duran game in Singapore, which is just a really cool country because most of the people living there, and 9% of them didn't grow up there, or they grew up there, but they're not from there. They're from all over. And it just encapsulates, what board games can do for different people. Brings people together from all over the place. And, the rules, and there's games that, are language independent, right? That you don't need to know, you don't have to speak English to be able to play, which is really cool. And so it really just highlighted the fact that bringing different people together. And that's kind of what I was going for. So I started working on the space on Elm Street and renovating the whole space. And I wanted to design a space that would be attractive to people who did not play games. Because I knew the people that did play games, they're used to playing in maybe game stores or their house. And so they were going to be kind of cool with whatever, as long as it was super comfortable. And we had all the games. So we had 1,800 games. We have more than that now. But the goal was to design a space that was comfortable for everybody. And that's kind of what we're going for with Boards and Brews. We have food, cocktails, coffee, and local craft beer. So we have a little bit of everything for everybody. And so that's kind of what we've been running with the last 2 years. The board game collection is obviously huge, and there's something for everybody. You can find pretty much most games you can think of, a huge section of classic games and modern games and word games and team cooperative games, which is a whole category that if you didn't play board games, you probably wouldn't know existed. Social deduction games where you have a secret role and you're trying to figure out who's on your team. And, so there's a game for everybody, which is really cool. We've also been able to host Peter White's radio show at the cafe on early mornings, where Joyce is able to come by and we're able to talk about economic development downtown in Manchester. So there's some great conversations happening with what Dean's doing in the mills. We had Oracle and new companies coming in and out of Manchester. It's definitely been an interesting couple of years, and we're totally excited to see what's coming next. But we also have some young entrepreneurs that are going out there and doing their thing. This is Deo, who just opened the living room space, which he's working with youth in the community. And I was able to be on his Persevere for Excellence podcast, which was really cool. I grew up next to him, so it's been great to be able to work with my peers, essentially. We've also been able to go to events in the community, the Gay Pride event, which we were able to go to last year. Events like this that we go to, we basically bring like quick games, and we were able to show people really quickly kind of like what we do and who we are, which again emphasizes the fact that there's like games that you can play in 2 minutes and have a really enjoyable time. But there's also games that you could play for like 3 or 4 hours and have a really, really interesting, exciting time that you just wouldn't expect, which is why board games are so cool. So yeah, they're pretty much for all ages, which is great, because our customers kind of are a wide array of different types of people. So some of the local craft beers that we're going to have is like Great North, Leatherman's, Concord Craft, Henniker, Mo. We do a lot of local guys. We have Backyard Brewery, Long Cat, and stuff like that. And we'll do some nights where we'll host games with them and stuff. This is class that we do with Great North, which is awesome. We also focus on specialty cocktails, which is exciting. Tina runs that whole program, and she comes up with a new menu every season, which is kind of one of the challenges that we've faced, which is kind of what I wanted, because I wanted to have the best cafe of all time. So we were going to need specialty coffee, which Erica runs a specialty coffee program and comes up with seasonal cocktails or seasonal craft lattes. So we do have like the specialty coffee that we get from A&E. We do have specialty cocktails and specialty board games. So it's like a lot in the food. It's a whole food program, which Dan runs. So there's a lot of little bells and whistles to this cafe. We also sell games, which is something that that we love to do, because when people, after we teach them a game, they're like, hey, I'm gonna go buy this on Amazon right now. It's great to be like, hey, we actually have it, which happens more than you'd think, because that's what we do. We teach board games, which is pretty unique. Most board game cafes don't teach as much games as we do. We really pride ourselves. We have dedicated staff that are hired just to teach games. So you're gonna have Trent, David, Eddie, Victor, me out on the floor just teaching you something new, something relatively easy, but something new. So we do corporate events. We'll teach large group games to corporate parties as well. We can see up to 75 people, which is pretty cool. To just hosting like D&D every Monday night, where you're going to be able to sit down at a table and somebody will teach you how to make a character and run D&D. They're not going to teach you how to run it, but they can teach you how to participate. So we have dungeon masters who run the games with various abilities of players and stuff. So you can be new to it, still join on Monday nights, which is pretty cool. But yeah, we really want to focus on the games and teaching people games. And so when you come in next time, you're like, hey, well, you can teach your friends the game that we taught you last time, which is really cool. So it's definitely a unique space where you can come and learn games that like aren't that hard and have a really good time, which is kind of like the best part of the job, obviously. Here at SNU, I'm at the library. I'm looking at an article in a magazine that I used to go to for references, back when I was studying organizational leadership. Business New Hampshire magazine used to have top 10 companies to work for. They publish that every year. And so I studied those companies in New Hampshire, and that's kind of like what pushed me to the direction of like, trying to do my own thing. I was like, I want to kind of focus on the people and how to make a good company to work for. And so I was like, working for a board game cafe would be great. So it's definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. We have 14 employees who come in every day and do the best they can. And it's a tough industry, especially when we specialize in so many different things, right? So just because Erica specializes in coffee, she also probably knows how to make all the cocktails as well. And Tina can definitely probably make all the lattes as well. So everyone's pretty much cross-trained. And this is the squad, our Christmas party there. But, when you get everybody together on the same page and we're like, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it, like we're literally running a board game cafe to make our community better. That's kind of like what we start with. And then everything else kind of builds around that. And that's how we find good staff. And that's why we're able to be so flexible and do whatever we want. Like when it's running corporate events or just teaching a family a board game, like our staff are pretty flexible. So I'm totally willing and ready for questions. So I thank you guys for listening, and I hope it's still recording.
All right, thank you, Keating. It's great to see places like Boards and Brews opening up that double as community spaces where you can partake in activities and don't have to drink if you don't want to. Though I will say your craft beer selection is pretty stellar. Also great to see Deo Moano featured in your presentation. Deo, for those of you who are just joining us today, actually opened up New Hampshire Next back on Monday with a pretty inspiring talk. Just want to interject here as we're kind of rounding out our presentations, have our final one coming up in just a moment, that we will be having a Q&A session right after our next presentation. So if you have any questions for any of our presenters or all of our presenters, be sure to just throw them in the comments section there, and we will answer them right after our next presenter. So speaking of, to that end, I am excited to introduce my friend, Ryan Pista. Ryan is the co-owner of both the Vista Realty Group and Bonafide Green Goods in Concord. Armed with extensive experience in farming, permaculture, visual arts, education, and community organizing, Ryan found that her passion for sustainable living and community building was well positioned to the world of real estate, and now owning a retail green goods store. In tune with her belief that real estate starts with community, Ryan puts environmental, social, and economic stewardship at the forefront of her business philosophy. Ryan's background in visual arts, design, education, and marketing have been integral to the Vista Realty Group's meteoric rise to prominence, making them a top real estate team in the state. Ryan is chair of the New Hampshire Association of Realtors Sustainability Working Group, the advocacy committee of the New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, and is a board member for In Town Concord. Please join me in welcoming Ryan Vista.
I start with this photo as this is the year I fell back to earth. I moved to Northern England after college to volunteer for a year on a biodynamic organic farm at a school for adolescents with special needs. Through that year of service, I experienced what a community looks like when everyone is doing their part and thriving. I live with people from all over the world who are volunteering to care for the students. Here we are building a kiln from clay we dug up and willows grown on site. I came back to New Hampshire and pursued an art education master's at UNH, and after 2 years of study, I accepted a position as a founding art teacher at a charter high school called Innovation Academy. I developed the art curriculum for 9th through 12th grade, and I started to teach, explore, and understand how our creativity could address our society's consumption and waste issues. And I did everything I could to show my students the importance and power of systems thinking, a circular economy, and a culture where creativity connects the arts and every other discipline, along with the natural world and our place within it. We started the school garden, got the school recycling, and turned the school into a gallery. No walls were off limits. I was allowed to turn the school into a full-scale installation of the students' projects from all of their disciplines. I taught classes called Where Does Your Food Come From?, Archeneering, and Ideal versus Real. I first learned about permaculture while living at a homestead in Tingsboro, Mass., where we dumpster dived from Trader Joe's and made gardens out of cardboard, compost, and leaves instead of digging the earth and exposing the soil. Permaculture is an ecological design process that operates based on 3 ethics and 12 principles. Participating firsthand in foraging from the food waste system, I started to realize the impact of food waste and how it was a major issue, and I knew I was meant to help people understand their consumption and how it affects their environment near and far. Permaculture encompasses everything. This illustration is how my mind worked, and it was the first time I felt like I had permission to keep weaving all of my passions, which at this point were expanding from farming to natural building, pottery, sustainable living, teaching, and everything that encompasses. My natural inclination in life is to help people grow and learn. I did this as a teacher, as an organizer, and now as a business owner. I took my first permaculture design course in 2011 at Colby Sawyer, and from there went on to be the co-founder of the Central New Hampshire Permaculture Meetup Group, which grew to over 700 members. We organized hundreds of educational and permaculture skill shares. I also organized multiple courses, including the first permaculture charrette in Franklin, New Hampshire, and an advanced permaculture course in Haiti. We were young, idealistic, beginning farmers at the time and had recently gone through the process of buying a 250-year-old abandoned house with no heat or water. Pretty stoked it was cheap, and we were gung-ho on building and connecting to our local community through starting a permaculture farm. We had absolutely no clue what we were doing. We purchased a 1780s 3,000 square foot home and started Phoenix Hill Farm Permaculture and Art. It was there I merged my passions again: art, clay, herbs, growing your own food, community events, fermentation, water, waste, compost, food waste, recycling, and working the farmer market scene and sailing forward and backwards, growing plants and animals. We raised chickens and chicken tractors, used pigs to eradicate Japanese knotweed, and had ducks running the property. A huge supporter of the Food Not Lawns movement, we turned our front yard into an abundant food forest with fruits, flowers, vegetables that fed both humans and wildlife. In the process of connecting to a network of farmers in New Hampshire, we observed there was a lack of education and awareness around accessing and transferring farmland in New Hampshire. We also learned through experience that our cheap house was anything but cheap, and our home buying process lacked several layers of education, which I now see are necessary. We tested the limits of how many animals we could raise, and for a moment lost touch of why we were farming, as soon as I left teaching and lost my steady income. And my husband made the first leap into real estate. He was moving from one commission job to another, and he took a massive pay cut, and we ended up getting into a dark place financially. We also did not realize how much work and money an old home needed, especially a home built between 1760 and 1780. Houses at that time were built for cooling, not heating, because wood was a plentiful fuel for heating and cooking. We had firsthand experience with splitting wood, paying exorbitant propane bills, and being cold. I am someone who sometimes needs to learn from hard lessons through sheer experience. I didn't realize I was too sick until I had chronic Lyme disease. I had worked through until I eventually couldn't work and experienced the loss of my hands, severe speech and memory issues, and I was essentially a zombie. I had stopped participating in everything. I could barely take care of the animals, let alone myself, and we discovered a leak in our kitchen that had turned into black mold. We filed an insurance claim and for an entire year lived without a kitchen. I believe our bodies have the innate ability to heal and follow the strict natural healing protocol set out by my chiropractor, which included going raw vegan for 4 months and juicing a half gallon of greens a day. This was a radical transformation for me, from carnivore to vegan. My sole job that year was to keep this regime going with no sink kitchen and our fridge broke, and keeping our produce cold in numerous farmers market coolers. Life got very hard. We were in a lot of debt. We reached $75,000 of debt, and there was no way to have the farm anymore. My husband convinced me to take the real estate exam, and it was during the first class I learned the definition of real estate was land and improvements. A spark was set off in me with this realization. Real estate offered a new platform for my desire to create lasting change. Switching from farming to real estate, thinking about permaculture and the flower spiral, I went on to build a business on the ethics of permaculture, fair share, earth care, and people care, and in other ways it can be translated to the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. In every aspect of how we conduct business, we are thinking, how can we make sure we're working towards helping people transfer stewardship of their land and their own personal finances? Stewardship is investing time, energy, and resources into a place and its people. Our real estate business has grown because we focused on education, and the more we learned about real estate, the more there was to teach both customers and the entire industry as a whole. As a founding member and now chair of the NHAR Sustainability Working Group, we have put on 2 green real estate symposiums, educating more than 250 realtors so they can in turn teach their clients about green real estate. We also love helping first-time buyers make smart decisions and avoid those we made. 2 years ago, I met with several community members to figure out how to revive Green Concord, which was formerly a trade organization. This led to partnering with Red River Theaters to put together the Earth Care series. Our goal was to make sure no one left the theater feeling overwhelmed by the state of the environment, but instead inspired to make one change at a time. This led to starting the Zero Waste in Hampshire Facebook group, which has over 900 members who are all passionate about reducing their waste and living more simply. I have been a supporter of Bonafide Green Goods since I first moved to the Concord area. It was the first store I went into in town and where I bought our client gifts, and we held our Pista Realty Group Client Appreciation event. While we were planning the Earth Care series, the owner let us know she was planning to sell again, and the spark was lit. This would be the perfect opportunity to expand the concept of home stewardship beyond real estate transaction and into the home. Our mission at Bonafide is to provide eco-conscious home and body products that are non-toxic and low zero waste. We have also put a huge emphasis on bringing in local makers, and in the 10 months we have owned Bonafide, we have paid out to our local makers over $30,000. We are also collaborating with local farms and our community-supported agriculture pickup for Fresh Start Farms and Local Harvest CSA. My goals for the future is to extend the concept of sustainability to development and redevelopment. Questions that continue to drive me and my work are, how can we develop sustainable and energy independence in our homes and communities? How can we live in a way that does not produce waste, extract resources from other parts of the world, and instead regenerates our communities so that everyone thrives? How can we build wealth in the health of those that own land and those that rent? How can we create beautiful landscapes that offer abundance of art and culture? And thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to your questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan. Fascinating presentation, and definitely a fascinating arc that your life and career has taken. I agree. I'm sure there will be some questions about that. Before we, I guess we can kind of jump in again. Please, if anyone has any questions, throw them down there in the comments box. Maybe we can start off, kind of by asking. Well, let's see. Aaron is asking, how can we support all of your businesses and projects virtually? Anybody wants to jump in?
For Bonafide, you could shop online or share our website with anyone anywhere in the world. We are doing everything that's in the store is now online, and that's been one huge positive thing that's come out of this great pause, is that we had the opportunity to build out the website. So that's one huge way you can help us.
For the Creative Guts podcast, if you want to listen, we release episodes every Wednesday, and they're available all the time on our website and all major podcast platforms.
For NH Rocks, it's pretty straightforward. You can buy digital cards online. We'll still mail them out so long as the USPS is still going. And we have been running a program that we're donating 25% of our profits from the sales price of the locals card to a participating business or to Stay Work Play, should you use their appropriate code. So Stay Work Play, for example, is just Stay Work Play, one word, and then we send them a check. Yeah.
Keating, how about Boards and Brews? I know you guys are I would think, pretty dependent on actually people coming to your space. Is there anything that people can do to help you guys out?
Right now, it's no, just wait for us to open up. We'll post on like social media and Instagram, and just give us a like. It's always good to comment when you see a picture of a game maybe you want to play or something. But yeah, no, we're just working on the inside of the cafe right now, and just getting ready. When we open up, we want to have everything ready to go. So we're just waiting.
All right, very cool. One thing I forgot to mention, we are going to ask if you wouldn't mind if everyone could turn off their video. That way we can hopefully see our panelists and kind of give them all our eyes there. Also, a question has come in for Laura and Sara. Are there any interviews that you really want to do for Creative Guts but haven't been able to schedule yet?
There have been a lot. We only have so much capacity. We both have day jobs. So we schedule, I'd say 4 or 5 a month, but that has changed obviously right now. There's hundreds of names on the list. Someone we're working with, coordinating with eventually, is Sam Polini, who is an artist and runs Wrong Brain, an amazing nonprofit arts collaborative in Dover, New Hampshire. You should check out. And there's just so many. It's hard to answer.
All right. Ryan and Keating, I know at least it sounds like, from your bios and your presentations that both of you have lived outside of New Hampshire at some point. Not sure about you other two, feel free to chime in as well, but I'm curious to know what brought you back to New Hampshire, and when you got here, what made you want to really get involved?
So that's John. I never left.
Sorry. John and Ryan.
You should go, Keating. It's fun. It's good to come back. Well, I moved out to California after college. I saved up not enough money and just drove myself out, slept on the floor for a little bit, and was pretty great. But honestly, I just kind of missed the mountains and the seasons and the proximity to activity. I maintain that how California markets itself is kind of what New Hampshire is. You can actually realistically go from the mountains to the seacoast to the city and not spend too much money doing it. And that's a full day. And then you can just go back home wherever. And then the general communities that we have across this state is really kind of a motivator to keep me here, and one that brought me back. Even in talking to different people in the different regions about NH Rocks and, how it could help, the conversations are different and they match kind of the general theme of each community, which is really interesting. The fact that we can be such a small state
yet be so diverse within each region and have so many different mentalities and opinions. It's really just interesting. So that's kind of what got me back.
How about you, Ryan?
Grad school got me back, and then I left, and then I think I came back because I love the opportunity that's here and how connected the state is, and then how quickly once you show up and get engaged, you meet all the people that are making things happen. And I just love how accessible that is in New Hampshire. Plus I love the same things that John said, the fact that I can get on the hiking trails really easily, or to the ocean, or to Boston. Like, it just has everything that's very accessible.
That is definitely the case, and we hear that over and over again at Stay Work Play as we go across the state. Having those the access to all the outdoor recreational opportunities in such close proximity to each other. Let's see, have one coming in here from Chris Nichols. Each one of you has such an inspiring story. What would you say to someone who has an idea where they could make a positive change? How and where does somebody get started? Also, what's everyone's favorite board game?
I can answer that first, is Monopoly. Second is, I would say, just start one step at a time and don't let anybody tell you no. Like, you're gonna fail, you're gonna face setbacks, but if you really believe in your idea, just play it out, but do it one step at a time. Don't think you're gonna achieve it all right away, because that's gonna disappoint you, but just start.
Great advice. John, Laura, Keating? Yeah, Keating.
So like I totally agree with Ryan. I mean, you got to get moving one way or another. My thing was when I started the whole project, I kind of looked at it like there was like absolutely no way I could fail. And I feel like Ryan probably looked at that too. And when you made the purchase on that house and you get those animals, it's kind of like you're responsible for them, and you have no other thing that you can do other than be successful to like take care of those animals. I know we all watch Tiger King, and you can see how like crazy something can get when you have to like take care of things, and you're responsible for like living things. And so when I started the cafe, I was like, I'm just gonna spend all my money, and if it's gonna work, it has to, because I just spent all my money. But if it didn't, I would figure out the next move, right? It didn't start getting real until you start having employees, and then you're like they rely on you for income. And then we look at a situation like this right now, where like so many people in our industry, my industry, are like out of work, and John's industry, and it's just like Ryan, she's sitting in a good spot because she's like, hey, we should be living like, we should be taking care of ourselves. Where like we're over here, we're like, no, we need people to go out and like spend money at restaurants and stuff. So it's definitely an interesting time. But yeah, for me, I just like, you just go for it. Like, you have no other reason but to be successful, and everything you should do, you're gonna do, should be for that goal. There's like no time for like, you're gonna miss parties, you're gonna miss all kinds of stuff if you're just focusing on what you're really passionate about, and then it will happen. That's kind of my point of view.
And what's your favorite board game out of all of the, what did you say, 18,000 or something you have there?
Yeah, we have more. I'd say this one. It's called Amerigo. You're taking ships and you're landing them on islands and putting puzzle pieces down and trying to race people to different islands and fill up the island, and you get points for it. It's pretty good.
Nice. Very cool. John, Laura, do you care to weigh in on this this question? And I will say too that let me interject here and just say we've hit our 3 o'clock hour. We recognize that a lot of folks just kind of dedicated an hour. If you have to hop off, as we know a couple of other people have, that's okay. We're gonna stick around here for maybe another 10 minutes or so, just for anybody who wants to hang out and chat, any of the participants or talk with any of your fellow attendees. But
sure. I guess I'd also kind of like to thank everyone for their time here. It seems harder almost to make appointments when you have nothing going on all day. I don't know why. So it's wonderful that you all took the time. But I guess for me, I would also kind of echo Keating and Ryan and say, it's kind of what you're passionate about as a way of getting started. And so I even kind of took that and brought it into my onboarding process for people that we have volunteer or people that have taken the time to actually join the cause fully. And that is, what would you attempt to do if you couldn't fail? And that's basically exactly what Keating was saying, and Ryan. And I believe finding an answer to that question is a great way to start, just because it helps you to identify what's going to be that passion for you. I guess for most of us, it seems to be some form of community, but it can be, arguably anything that lights that fire. And then I'd say the largest thing is just don't stop. When you're doing something, it's hard, and the setbacks are brutal, and the emotional strain can be heavy. And then if you get employees, suddenly you can start feeling responsible, and it's a lot harder than some people will admit to or will say. And I think for people that are starting, knowing that you're just going to have to keep going forward and keep walking despite it all is a key thing. And then as far as my favorite game, probably cribbage, because I'm a sucker. But I will say that the last time I was at Boards and Brews, we played, was it Happy Salmon or something? And that was just tremendous. It's a great way to cap off the evening. So if you haven't done that, I would suggest heading down there when we can and checking it out for sure.
Awesome. How about you, Laura? What advice would you give somebody for getting started and making positive change?
Everything everyone has said, I completely agree with. I would also add, things are a little less scary when you have a partner or a team to do it with. And I had the idea, I wanted to do a podcast, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it. And teaming up with a good close friend of mine was the only way it was going to really happen. We could bounce ideas off each other. We could pull each other back when we were getting a little too head in the clouds. And there's a great balance having a partner or a couple partners, especially if they share the same passions as you. And it really does come down to passion, because you can dream up something, but if you're not going to put in the time, the hard work and all the bummer parts of all the stuff you have to do, then, you're going to stop pursuing it. And having a partner also helps you get pumped up when you are feeling a little low in those moments. There have been times where editing drives me nuts and it's a lot of time, and just taking a break and talking to Sara, has immensely helped me get refocused and into it. And we both do the editing, so we kind of do that for each other. And, as far as board games, that's really tough. I'm going to do not a technical board game, but I play Pathfinder once a week. I used to be 2 days a week, so it was pretty much a huge part of our lives. For those who don't know, it's a tabletop RPG game that's very similar to D&D.
I see backgammon behind you.
Yeah.
Classics. Cribbage is a great game, John. Cribbage is awesome.
We're a big board game fan.
Timeless.
Awesome. All right, we have one more question here. Molly Lund Owen is, Molly, have you given birth yet? It's about that time, right? Curious to know, she's curious to know. I'll let you answer that if you want to.
Still waiting. Nope, I'm a week overdue, so hanging in there.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
So Molly wants to know, have any of you considered running for office or getting involved in systems level change as part of your town or city government? And or how could elected officials make the work you do easier? Anybody want to jump in on that one? Have any thoughts?
I've considered it. I even saw something pop up on Facebook the other day that was like, maybe you should run for town office or something. And I was like, meh. Yeah, could be fun. I don't know if I would want to do it now because I'm a little overwhelmed in what we're aiming to do, but some form of private-public partnerships kind of always been on the docket for me. In wanting to create basically huge community centers in each tourist region in New Hampshire, you need help, and that would likely be through some sort of government entity. So I guess being better connected to the people that would help with zoning and housing and environmentalists that can help make this happen, or some kind of way to get extra funding would be helpful and what I would do. But I guess if all this went down, yeah, government could be fun.
Anyone else had that that desires, that thought crossed your mind of perhaps
Not
running?
exactly, but you know, being on Elm Street, we definitely during the primary we get to see a bunch of politicians, and you know, I get to see you guys, the aldermans, on Elm Street every now and then. So no, I like my goal is just to like build a community space that people and politicians could kind of meet and get to know each other, and that's, I felt like board games were like a great way to get people to the table that like really have nothing in common, because I feel like that's a big thing where there's a lot of people who have no idea kind of like who their alderman is or what's going on in the community with politics at all, and just community spaces where people can get together and where they're going to see their neighbor and be like, oh, hey, how's it going, and like actually have a conversation. That's kind of like my approach to this whole like political disconnect. And then we'll see where it goes. But yeah, Will had a meeting. I think I sat in with you and Tim and Derek Schuster back in the day. So kind of like that's kind of like the goal.
Very cool. Maybe I'll start holding office hours there, and I can challenge constituents to Scrabble or something.
There you go. I'd love to see that. I've been waiting to get like board games with Joyce or something. I've been waiting to kind of pop that question. And I actually did teach Joyce and her family Secret Hitler. There was like there's 9 of them. Secret Hitler is a special deduction game where you can play with up to 10 people. And the little girl, she must have been like 7, and she was Hitler. And when that end game trigger happened and she won, and like I was kind of helping her next to her, and I was like, you can say it now. And so like something happened, and then she just tells everybody she's Hitler, and everybody, it was quite an interesting experience. But I know some people were talking about Secret Hitler in the comments earlier. But yeah, so that's kind of, I'd love to get you guys down playing some games.
Awesome. Ryan, Laura, how about you guys?
Though I like to channel the persona of Leslie Knope sometimes, I don't think it's probably in the card for me as much. Much like anything that you get into, I think it should be your passion. So art and music and creating a community is sort of my passion, but I've never had a gut reaction to joining in like that.
Yeah, I don't think I will be running for any offices, but I do think that my plan is to acquire enough real estate and change the way that we develop real estate that I will have the impact that being a politician could have on the way we live.
And I think, that's a very good point, Ryan. And, not just through real estate, but I think, if I can just, wrap us up here, that, obviously all of our presenters today have shown how, individuals and people working individually and, with teams, and I think everybody is part of a team. Nobody has done what they've done all by themselves, have been able to make positive impacts. And, while it's great to be in, working on the policy level, that you can have, sometimes more of an impact outside of elected office too, and do it through whatever your passion is, whether it's entrepreneurship or travel and tourism, board games and the arts. I mean, we've all we've shining examples here today of how that's possible. So I would like to say a big thank you to all of our presenters. Here, let me turn my video back on there. A big thank you to everyone for sharing your stories with us this afternoon. They were all incredibly inspiring and informative, with lots of great lessons for those of us who want to make our own impact here in New Hampshire. I will note, as I mentioned, we'll keep this room open a few more minutes. If any of our attendees today want to stick around and chat with each other, feel free. I know our presenters are, I don't know if they'll be able to stick around or not. They probably have some other things to go do, but feel free, anyone who wants to stick around for a few more minutes, to do just that. I'd like to again express our gratitude to Dartmouth Hitchcock Health for their sponsorship of New Hampshire Next, a summit for young change makers. and looking ahead to tomorrow. Again, this is a week-long summit that we're doing. So we're going to be right back here on Zoom at 2 o'clock tomorrow for the next session of New Hampshire Next, and we're going to hear from Caroline Dillon, who was Stay Work Play's 2019 Rising Stars Awards High School Student of the Year award recipient. And she's going to talk about her experience getting the period poverty bill passed last year through the New Hampshire legislature and signed into law by the governor. We're going to hear how she did it, as well as the kind of her tips and best practices for making policy change from someone who has firsthand experience. Hers is an incredible story, and after a brief Q&A, attendees are going to break out into kind of smaller groups where they'll be able to connect with other change makers in New Hampshire to talk about what they've learned and discuss and learn a little bit how to advocate for change in their own backyards. And that's going to be led by Sara Ducros, Laura's partner in crime there with Creative Guts. And it's going to be another great day. You do not want to miss it. If you haven't already signed up, go to stayworkplay.org, and you can go find out how to do just that. So with that, thank you again for joining us, and have a great day, everyone.